talk about the beginning here. When this company moved in here, the city government didn't care. They just wrote permits. And
No, as a matter of fact, because of the quite prevalent assumption that if land was vacant, it was worthless. And they didn't have the environmental concern or the organizations involved with environmental preservation. And so the City Council, in one of its wonderful land use decisions, allowed polluting industry, Halico, to come in here. They knew they were a smelting operation, but they wanted the tax base and they welcomed them here.
There was, what you're saying is there was probably no environmental review over what they were going to do.
There was, if there was even an environmental review process at that time, I'm sure they didn't bother with it because no one could have brought that business onto this ground if there'd been any concern for environmental survival.
So this mountain of slag behind us here.
Yes.
This wasn't even in the consideration when the city government said move in.
I cannot speak to that with authority. I don't know what the maneuverings were or the under the table or over the table kinds of choices that were made. But certainly if you have a smelter, you have a need for a slag heap. I don't think they maybe ever envisioned that it would grow to 40 feet high, which averages out to about 1 foot for every year Halico was here.
So they may have just presumed that the company was going to have a place to send its slag products to and just let it go.
Wouldn't that have been nice? But you know, you ask questions. Now today, I would hope that that was not going to be the truth, but we just had a decision made by a city council who sits today 40 years later than Halico came here, and they now want to bring more industry down to this wetland. So maybe they don't learn too well or care too much, though they say they support the wetlands. In fact, they just passed an environmental impact report, really terribly flawed, that will allow them to bring more industry on to Ormond Beach. So maybe civilization isn't all it's cracked up to be, because the Chumash lived here in an absolutely beautiful environment that provided everything they needed, and they never did a thing to harm the land.
So this metal plant here, it recycled a whole lot of different stuff. I see in my reading that this slag contains a lot of different metals.
Yes, it does.
From copper to chrome.
Yes.
Copper being probably a less toxic material than the chrome or cadmium.
Yes.
But there's also radioactive material here.
Yes, there is.
Tell us about that.
Well, I know they found levels higher than they expected, and they have reported those, but I don't have them committed to memory. What is true is that we have a really serious problem back here that is serious enough, Bill, that they haven't yet decided how to get rid of it, or whether they should just cover it up or whatever. But the problem is, of course, that when you have something of that toxicity, it's leaking into the soil, and it's very likely leaking into the water table.
So this site here now, if they can clean it up, what are their plans for it?
Well, the EPA, of course, will turn it over to the community. And the community has had many, many years of fighting over this and struggling and learning and reading and testifying and doing everything else they could to inform as many people as possible. And we have a plan for this Ormond Beach Wetlands. It's very simple. It is not an expensive thing to do, but the first and foremost thing we need is a welcome center, so that we can bring people to this beach and give them a welcome, an introduction to a raised platform that is planned to be a self-directed nature tour with information at several different sites along. They'll be able to be above the birds so they don't disturb the nesting season. And in addition, it is critically important to us that the city council not continue to pass, as they just did, an approval of the EIR, and they will then use this as a base for approving industry here on Ormond Beach, and also a massive development center right across. The reason that the California Coastal Conservancy and the Nature Conservancy came here, there were several reasons this was a special place. It has both salt and fresh water, and so it's unique in that respect and offers much better habitat for many different kinds of species. There are over 300 species of birds that use this flyway, the Pacific Coast Flyway, and many of them lay over here and feed and forage before they go on. We have 9 species that are endangered or threatened. This is a treasure land. It has to be preserved.